IVM.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 48 of the Fighting G.O.A.T. This is Arjun aka Mystic Chips Chipalkatti along with your dost Somesh Superhuman Kamra. We've got a great episode for you. Lots of things to talk about. UFC 270, the Masti and Maza that's happening on Twitter, and more importantly, the evolution of a well-rounded fighting game to survive in today's MMA world. Lots and lots more coming up after this quick commercial break, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Hey, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Cyrus Says, Mudit Dandwate, CEO and co-founder of Dozy, tells Cyrus how he built his health tech company and survived a crocodile attack. On The Longest Constitution, Priya tells us about the history of the rights of the disabled. This started in the 1970s with the Organization of the Blind. On a show about crypto, Rohan is joined by Kash Danda, who's a founding member at Superteam DAO. They discuss whether Solana is an Ethereum killer as is commonly believed in this space. On Press Decode, Sarah and Vagda discuss the acquittal of Bishop Franco Mulakkal and whether the beautification of Purani Delhi strips it of its charm. On Postcards from Nowhere, Utsav tells us the surprising story of how money orders, Dehradun, and the transatlantic slave trade are all connected. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Don't forget to rate us on any of the platforms you're listening to us on. And also remember, you can check out a lot of our stuff on YouTube. Go to ivmpodcast.com/YouTube and you'll get a list of all the various channels that we do have. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Bank of Baroda and CoinSwitch Kuber. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Welcome back to the Fighting G.O.A.T. You're listening to the voice of Arjun aka Mystic Chips Chipalkatti and Somesh the Superhuman Kamra. We've had one heck of a weekend and a lot of masti that went along with that weekend. Man, how's it going, Mr. Kamra? Are you enjoying the Bombay's second wind? Well, it's technically the second wind of the better weather.
Namaste to all our listeners. Namaste to the host and dost. It is a new week for us after UFC 270, which was extremely hot. But the weather in Mumbai is pretty cool. I just read a tweet saying it is 13 degrees in the afternoon.
It could be. No,
I swear.
Not 13
really?
days. No,
Right?
I am following the same weatherman on Twitter. And I think it's the lowest Bombay is getting to.
Acha, okay. Maybe.
Like you have to be sitting behind that Booth Ka Ped in Goregaon National Park.
No, so this was Santa Cruz. So this thing is in Santa Cruz.
Santa Cruz?
Yeah, and it's at 13.2 degrees. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure.
Hang on, our producer's in Santa Cruz, no? So Rohini Srishti stays in Santa Cruz.
Yes.
You'd ask her.
But she has a couple of houses, couple of them in Africa, couple US, couple in India. So, but we are enjoying the thund. It is literally the second wave of thund after a extremely hot UFC 270.
It was incredible. I mean,
man, what a start to the year with the pay-per-view.
It was a great start to the year. I mean, the first pay-per-view was incredible. And then, of course, the first pay-per-view of 2021, where there was so much pressure. There were two title fights. It was a flyweight title that was on the line between Brandon Moreno.
2022.
Oh, shit. Still getting used to saying 2022.
Me too.
Me too.
As in, not that me too, but this
not that me too. No, this me too. No, but it was such an incredible card. We had two title fights. We had Brandon Moreno and Davison Figueiredo taking on each other for the third time to decide who the ultimate flyweight king would be.
Yes.
And of course, as Mystic Chips predicted, it was right. My prediction
was a brilliant prediction, actually.
Dude, I told you, stop fighting against it. You also got, and the second title fight was for all the marbles, the heavyweight title fight in the UFC. Who is the baddest man on the planet between Francis Nagannou and Francis Cyril Gane.
Yes.
And honestly, my second prediction was 3 minutes away from coming true, but mere dil ki baat jo hui. Francis Nagannou retains his belt, and to the displeasure of a couple people, I must say. That's all I'll say about it.
Well, but in fact, a lot of scorecards, a lot of Janta scorecards, a lot of prediction games did hint that Brandon Moreno actually had the slight advantage in the entire fight. So I don't know how it works, because I personally feel Figueiredo clearly won that. But a lot of people are debating it and saying, I think it should have been Brandon Moreno.
No, I mean,
but
see, the thing is that I've been monitoring. So there's this app called Verdict, and I play the games on the Verdict app, which basically means you predict the fight score by score, round by round, and then you can choose whether the method of delivery, the method of finish, whether it's by decision, whether it's by knockout, by TKO, by submission, what have you. And on that, where the world scoring was happening, it said clearly that Moreno was the winner. Yes. And in my mind as well, when I was scoring, I was saying, firstly, the first thing that was in my mind was that it's too close to call.
Yes.
It's too close. Like the judges have their work cut out for them, number one. And number two is that fight was in the past when we've seen close fights, like Shogun versus Machida 1, Frankie Edgar versus BJ Penn 2. When we've seen these fights, when they come that razor thin close, it usually favors the champ.
Yes.
Because to beat the champ, you have to beat the champ. You have to best the champ.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. In fact, it was so close because on one side, we had Moreno taking down Figueiredo. On the other side, we had Figueiredo knocking down Moreno twice. So which holds more value?
That's a funny thing. I was having a conversation with one of our fans, Bombay banker, Vishal.
Yes.
And he told me, he was having an argument with me, saying that how can it be scored that way? And it happened this morning while I was having coffee. Yes. And I told him, I said, you know what? This is a good topic and we should talk about it. Because at the end of the day, I think damage and knockdowns are paramount. They are the highest. You can hit me 30 times in my face without me reacting. But if I hit you once and you go down, that will always be higher than all the shots that you've taken.
Right. But I was in fact debating more of the takedowns versus the knockdowns. So,
come on.
Brandon Moreno taking down Figueiredo and not being very active versus Figueiredo knocking Brandon Moreno down twice.
Yeah, and the thing is that the minute Figueiredo knocked him down, he followed up with strikes. He looked for something. The end of that third round, that punch which landed clean on Brandon Moreno's face, which dropped him.
That overhand.
That big overhand bomb. That would have knocked out most featherweights.
Yes.
Let alone flyweights. So Moreno has a chin, man.
And absolutely.
And the way he went down, and then you saw immediately, had there been 30 seconds remaining in that round, we might have seen a finish.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. However, the co-main event and the main event went to the decision. But if we run through the card, man, it started off in the welterweight division between Michael Morales and Trevin Giles, which ended in the first round. Dude, four odd minutes.
Dude, that was a back and forth affair, man. Morales and so Giles. Giles was touted to be this striker who was coming after Morales. And, Morales is more of a ground game fighter. He's got the jits, he's got the skill. But it went back and forth. And for Morales to finish him via strikes was something huge.
Imagine opening the fight card the main card with that particular fight, moving on to the bantamweight division side. Nurmagomedov taking on Cody Stamann.
Oh, by the way, guys, before you even ask any questions, please remember that on Twitter, it says, so on Wikipedia, it says on his Wikipedia, I am not Khabib's brother.
But, it's quite funny. I mean, why wouldn't you take the honors? You share the same surname, you come from the same region, your background is in Sambo, and honestly, the way he finished it within the first minute.
Dude, don't you feel, Somesh, that the newer crop of the Dagestani guys that are coming out, you look at Ankalev, you look at Islam Makhachev, now you look at Said Nurmagomedov, their striking is leaps and bounds ahead of their predecessors. Like look at Khabib. For the first 7-8 odd fights in the UFC, his striking was lackluster, was very bad.
Yes.
He started developing better striking later. He's still not very good striking-wise.
Absolutely. So, in fact, that is the topic of today, where we're going to be speaking extensively on how fighters have to continuously evolve to stay relevant in the sport of mixed martial arts.
That's true. That's true.
But that topic is going to come in the next segment. But what about Michael Pereira and Andre Filho?
Firstly, Michel Pereira.
I'm sorry. I don't know why I always call him Michael.
Because you have that Goan thing. Goa boy is fighting. That Pereira boy is fighting tomorrow. That's the first thing I said. I love Michel Pereira. Man, that welterweight division has got so many good contenders. And Michel Pereira is this Brazilian huge monster who's got a wild fighting style. Completely wild fighting style, who took on Andre Fialho. who is an import from the UAE Warriors. So basically, he was imported from the UAE Warriors organization and made his debut on such a big card.
Right.
Can you imagine to make a debut on a main card with 2 title fights on it, and it's the first card of the year?
Well,
that's a big deal.
And he didn't disappoint. He was there. He took some good shots. He was striking Pereira really well, but didn't cut the glove.
Man, the second round where Pereira came back and landed those massive, the work in the clinch, the body shots, that front kick to the body was pure money.
Absolutely.
He landed it over and over and over again.
We spoke about this on our Insta Live post the show, where we said how Pereira is most vulnerable in round number 1, and he just gets better round number 2. He was good. Round number 3, he was fabulous.
He was round number 2 was where he landed most of the damage.
Yes.
And round number 3 is when they were both had spent so much of energy. They were a little gassed out. And you could see the movement of Andre had slowed down a lot because of that body work.
Absolutely.
It was a well fought out, hard victory. But Mr. Kamra, I'm reading a tweet right now from MMA Fighting that has come out saying that lock your dates, UFC 274, May 7th. It's Glover Teixeira versus Yuri Prohaska for the light heavyweight title.
And there's also Charles Oliveira and Justin Gaethje.
It's the same card.
The same card, and it's happening in Brazil.
Brazil. La, 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 la.
It's not confirmed, but I know it's going to happen.
It's confirmed. It has to. He's come out of the jungle. I have to say, he's come out of the jungle.
Well, in fact, in November, the UFC London card was already being planned because they obviously knew from the government that, the lockdown is going to be lifted and travel restrictions are going to be non-existent. So March is when the UFC is going to go to London, followed by the next overseas pay-per-view, which is going to be in the month of May in Brazil, where the light heavyweight belt and the lightweight belt is going to be on the cards.
Oh yeah, I can already predict that one. Charles Oliveira retains, and we see a new light heavyweight champion.
That is crazy. But what we can speak about is your brilliant co-main event prediction, where Davison Figueiredo beat Brandon Moreno. But Chips, tell me one thing. In this particular scenario, when the first one was a draw, second one went to Moreno, third one went to Davison Figueiredo, there's obviously that aspect that they have to fight one more time.
They have to. Look, these kind of matches, where they have such amazing fights that come out. I don't remember a fight between these two that have been boring. I just don't. It's always action. It's always balls to the wall action. You're going to see some vicious beating. You're going to see some great takedowns. You're going to see great skill. And Brandon Moreno looked like a world beater last night.
Yes.
He just did. He's the way he changes. He's such a sweet little guy outside, but his just face switches. That door locks and tuck. He becomes the baby-faced assassin. And his movement, the way his hand movement, his head movement, the strike, the speed of his strikes. I remember there was a low calf kick being landed by Figueiredo, which got Moreno off balance. But he had so much of fighting spirit in him that even while going down, he landed an overhand right, which caught Figueiredo right on the face.
And then he pointed at him.
And he pointed because he knew he had rocked him slightly because of that shot. And that's what I'm talking about. These two guys are destined to fight each other. But
absolutely,
that being said, no. Next fight is got to go to somebody else. You can't tie up a division for one year at a time like this, man.
Well, fair enough. It's almost like the Max Holloway, Alexander Volkanovski equation, where after a while we say, listen, Alex is a better fighter. Yes, he's not more marketable. He's not an American. He is a little docile fighter, but at the end of the day, he has beaten Max Holloway. So, after a while, even Volkanovski said, listen, it's getting ridiculous because it's come to a point where UFC just want Holloway to beat me.
Yeah, they do. But honestly, I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
It's like the same thing that happened with the heavyweight fight.
Yes.
Literally everybody I knew, every analyst in the world had the odds towards Cyril Gane. He was the more technical striker. He was the more well-rounded fighter. He was the more rangier fighter. He has better cardio. He's got better everything than Francis Nagannou. But that's the beauty of fighting, where sometimes the biggest surprises come out of nowhere. Who in the world, Somesh Kamra, would have ever thought we would see Fardin Ngannou Medov?
Fardin Ngannou?
instead of Francis Nagannou, it's Martin Ngannou.
Well, that's absolutely crazy because the fact that, Ngannou has shifted his base now to Las Vegas. He trains out of Extreme Couture.
That's Randy's gym, right? Randy Couture's gym.
Yes. And Eric Nixick is his head coach. And can you imagine the thought process where you have Usman in his corner? You know that, yes, he's gotten Usman for a reason. Instead of striking, he actually, like Francis Ngannou, takes him down and starts wrestling with him.
I think
what a master game plan.
It was a very good game plan. And who knew Francis Nagannou had those chops? I mean, I remember, so guys, I'm getting a little bit technical. I hope that we'll be supported by visual imagery for this.
Yes.
But there was a point where there's something called a whizzer, which a lot of fighters use to get up. It's basically interlocking the shoulder and the arm over the shoulder and the arm of your opponent and using that as leverage to get up. It's called a whizzer. So you use it to defend a takedown, use it to defend a trip. But what Francis did with the whizzer was used a whizzer trip, which is a judo move.
Yes.
And it's like me joining the Indian cricket team and started hitting helicopter shots overnight.
Yes. And in fact, you know what the best part was? There was one moment where Ngannou had a clean grip on Cyril Gane and he picked up 250 pounds and slammed him to the mat. And I was like, oh my God. Because that doesn't need only power. It needs good amount of technique.
Yes, there was a lot of technique. He had a high crotch. He had a high crotch grip. And he just, that brought tears to DC's eyes.
Absolutely. That really brought tears to DC's eyes. And after a while, we just felt, listen, this is a absolutely new dimension to Francis's game. And how beautiful is it that Usman and Francis are hanging out together. Usman is knocking out people and Francis is using his wrestling game. Such a beautiful synergy. And that's exactly going to be the next topic that we're going to be speaking about.
Absolutely.
On how single-dimensional fighters will need to adapt to the sport of mixed martial arts if they need to be relevant. A single-dimension fighter not exactly or not always will go through the ranks and climb up the ladder.
Yeah.
But hopefully, if they need to last in the game and create an impact, you need to be an overall fighter. So we are going to be discussing about this after this short commercial break.
Namaste, this is Cyrus Brocha. I am part of the government cancel culture program to remove rubbish off all the different streams available. So what we have is all the collected rubbish we put together on our show. It's called Cyrus Says. It's on IVM Podcast. You have to watch it and listen to it. It's on our app. It's on our website. It's on the YouTube channel. It's on Facebook. There are many different ways. Don't bother me and ask me how. You have to find out. We talk to different personalities. Many of them are known. Some are just people we meet downstairs and invite them up for chai. But the point is, it's fun and it's very therapeutic. So please join in and listen to Cyrus Says.
Welcome back to The Fighting Goat. You've been listening to The Fighting Goat only on ivmpodcast.com. My name is Arjun Chipalkatti, aka The Mystic Chips, who has been correct now for almost a year with his predictions, joined by my buddy, Mr. Somesh Kamra. And we're going to be talking about the evolution of evolved skill sets. Now, when fighting started, a lot of fighters come in. Like when you go to a class, when you're kids, when you start growing up, you saying, I want to learn a combat sport.
Yeah.
A lot of kids in Europe and Asia went to sports like karate, taekwondo, Muay Thai, what have you, kung fu, or whatnot. A lot of people in the US and North America, they started wrestling. A lot of them started boxing.
Yes.
And especially in the UK, boxing was huge. Boxing is huge in the UK. Boxing has been huge even in the Latin countries. South America, you talk about Colombia, Argentina, Brazil, all these places, Mexico, the boxing that comes out there. But these are single disciplines.
Yes.
Single discipline fight. When you talk about mixed martial arts, it's a combination. It's a combination of wrestling, judo, boxing, Muay Thai, karate, everything. And we saw, remember the era of, when I started watching MMA, it was still around, 2003, 2004.
Yeah.
And I saw guys like, in the UFC, I'm talking about specifically, was guys like Randy Couture.
Chuck Liddell, maybe.
Chuck Liddell is the best example, to be honest. Is a striker who came in, but at the same time, he had takedown defense.
Yes.
He had learned enough to keep it in his area of expertise. So he is, I would say, the exception, not the rule.
Yeah.
Guys like Chuck Liddell, they survived somehow. because of their great striking and takedown defense.
Well, also, I personally believe that happened because the era of fighters were on the same platform.
Correct.
Now, with extremely experienced coaches like Greg Jackson, like Trevor Whitman, they design game plans depending on how the opponent is. And the game has evolved to a level where, honestly, a calf kick is something which is very new in the game.
We never used to see it, yeah.
A side kick to the knee, what Jon Jones started is extremely new.
Spinning elbows are a new thing relatively.
Correct.
It was started by Jackson Wink, to be honest.
Yes. Those vicious elbows in the clinch.
Oh, man.
We never saw this in the sport of mixed martial arts. In fact, when I started seeing the sport, even in Pride, way back
no elbows were allowed, but no elbows were allowed in Pride.
Correct. But way back in 2002, 2003, even in the UFC, we never saw these. But
no, never.
The fact that it has evolved, which means the fighters also have to evolve,
Absolutely. I mean, now if we talk about it in its most open sense, I mean, it's like saying for all our listeners, it's like saying in cricket, for example, the Indian cricket team at one point in the 90s was so good at batting, but we were so poor at fielding and our bowling was kind of lackluster. Like we used to lose matches because of our poor fielding, poor athleticism.
Right.
And we had such great batsmen. We had incredible batsmen, but we would have a few areas of the game where we slacked. And now if you compare it with today's cricket team, look at the athleticism. Look at, we are not weak in any department. Yes, predominantly, we are still strong in batting. Indians will always be better at batting.
Well, I would give a different analogy to this. To be honest, I would say if you look at someone like an Inzamam ul Haq, who's a great batsman, but who didn't like to run.
Inzi never liked to run, man. How many runouts have we seen because of Inzamam's lack of running?
Chris Gale, who's a good batsman, but who didn't like to run. So, in today's Zamana, you need to be on the par of Virat Kohli, who's got good fitness, who's got good skill set, who can run, who can...
Dude, Virat can do it all.
So,
but Virat, that's the thing. Now we are comparing a sport where in cricket you can still get away with some of these things. You can get away with some of these things. Yes, fitness, of course, that's the way. But when you do fitness to be a bowler, it's doing fitness to be a bowler. It doesn't mean that you can run marathons. Yes. It doesn't mean that you can climb mountains. You're becoming fit to bowl. And that, I think that in every sport, that entire mentality and that the necessity of a rounded skill set is becoming important.
Yes.
So, they're expecting now, if you see training methods, I mean, you're a coach, you run your own gyms. You see people using plyometric training for everything now. Where once upon a time, you would not see that in every sport.
In fact, we would not see strength training till about 15, 20 years back. In most sports in India, be it boxing, be it judo, be it kabaddi, be it wrestling, the athletes that just did not hit the gym because they felt if they lift weights in a certain manner, they would get bulky, they would lose their flexibility and they would not play the sport well. But that has changed drastically. Everybody does compound movements. Everybody does plyometrics because the base of any sport is strength. And from there, you can always build a skill set. Like, for example, on UFC 270, Andre Filho, the Portuguese fighter who came in, only had boxing, not even striking.
He had only boxing.
He only had boxing.
Great boxing, but
and he was hanging in there. But if you speak of Michel Pereira, who came in with his kicks, who came in with all the flashy stuff, who tried to take Andre down, I think he just took away the fight. If you compare the boxing, I think Andre was much better. But in the sport of mixed martial arts, mixed martial arts, you need to have an overall game if you need to climb up the ranks.
That's true.
We also saw it. We also saw it in the main event of the evening where Francis Nagannou changed his game plan.
Dude, it was so smart. And that's the thing. Being a more well-rounded fighter gives you the ability to change as the fight moves on.
Absolutely.
In Andre Fiallo's case, he couldn't do anything but strike. He couldn't do anything. And mind you, he did it damn well. He did it damn well. We saw it, the same thing happened when somebody like Edson Barboza faced off against Shane Burgos. Shane Burgos is such a great boxer. He comes in from a boxing style. But when Edson Barboza started peppering him with kicks, those body kicks, knees, elbows, and of course, eventually stopped him with strikes only, that just shows how great Edson Barboza is.
Right.
But my point is that in the next fight, Shane Burgos came back with a much more well-rounded skill set.
Absolutely.
He had brought in clinch striking, clinch wrestling, overall wrestling and grappling, he looked like a much more dangerous fighter.
He looked evolved, to be honest.
Much more evolved. I mean, if you look at the evolution-wise, the greatest fighter to have ever evolved is Jon Jones. The man who came in with a JUCO background, which is junior college wrestling background, but with his natural skills and his body, which, you know, he's got the greatest skills in that light heavyweight division.
Yes.
Greatest gifts physically. But the evolution of that to come to a point where he mixed up the grappling, the jiu-jitsu, his length, his range, his reach, his striking with his elbows and jumping knees. I mean, that's what I call a complete fighter.
Absolutely. In fact, another fighter who is 29-0, Khabib Nurmagomedov, is somebody who I feel may have had, No,
he got away with his single discipline.
He had close to zero striking for the first 20 fights of his career.
I would say a little more.
It's only once he came to AKA and started striking with Javier Mendez, that is when he applied a little bit of his hands. But he was typically a one-dimensional fighter, but he was so dominant in his grappling and wrestling and his jiu-jitsu that he got away with it. And I personally feel he climbed to where he had to and he retired at the perfect time.
Bro, but I think the one thing that Khabib evolved on was if you realize to the last few fights, Khabib had great ground control. Yes. But he was not finishing fights. He used to decision these guys. Take them to a unanimous decision, 50-45, 50-45, even lesser. Yeah. But in the last few fights, he evolved in terms of his grappling. Where he learned one thing was his rear naked choke. Yes. And that's all he needed, dude. That rear naked choke and that neck crank helped him finish off Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, Conor McGregor. And I don't know, had he evolved earlier, he would have probably finished off more guys with the same choke.
Yes, absolutely. But it's all, it's all about moving your camp and getting to a different coach who will add another dimension to your fight game. Like, I used to love Junior Dos Santos, but if you put him,
oh my God,
if you put him in his prime, in today's game, I think he will not last a couple of minutes.
No. That gives that's a tough one to pick, because that's like saying, okay, let's bring in Michael Jordan versus LeBron James. That's not fair.
It's not fair. But what I'm trying to say is that if today Cyril Gane has to face a top Junior Dos Santos, I think Cyril Gane would beat him.
No. I mean, remember how fast Junior was? Remember how good his takedown defense was? And Junior used to pop in and out of range like he was a bloody welterweight once upon a time.
Well, but even Cyril Gane is no less. So
that would be a great fight. Now, can you imagine? Okay, imagine prime Cain Velasquez versus Cyril Gane. Man, that would have been a fight.
It would have been crazy. I would in fact
love Shane Carvin, dude. Shane Carvin.
I would love to see an Alistair Overeem taking on Cyril Gane.
Dude, I can say this with the utmost sincerity. Alistair Overeem versus Cyril Gane. I mean, prime Alistair Overeem, Cyril Gane, Alistair Overeem.
Yeah, I mean, we always have favorites. But what I'm trying to say out here is that the fighters need to evolve the game. If great fighters like Khabib did it, even see someone like a Conor, when he was facing Khabib, I think he did a beautiful job with the takedowns. He really put in time on the wrestling.
Dude, firstly, Conor McGregor put in so much of effort and he changed his body type for that fight.
Yes.
He become a lot bulkier. He had actually he had gained a lot of cardiovascular energy in terms of grappling.
Yes.
Because he didn't gas. His arms were not filled in with blood. He was okay. He was doing okay. But it's Khabib that you're grappling against. But he made Khabib work for it. I would say that Conor did a better job defending takedowns of Khabib than both Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje combined.
Absolutely yes. I totally agree. A lot of people out there do not agree. But to be honest, I absolutely agree. In fact, Chips, when we go back a few years, there were pure strikers versus pure wrestlers in the sport of mixed martial arts. And then just came in BJ Penn.
Oh my God. Now you're talking about that's the guys like BJ Penn, Alistair Overeem are my jam, man. I will defend BJ Penn to the ends of the earth.
Me too.
He is one of the greatest lightweights that ever existed in the world. I would say he has seen both eras. He's been through so much and he's been through every division, fighting from heavyweights down to featherweight.
Yes.
And it's incredible how evolved. What the problem with BJ Penn, it annoyed a lot of fans, was that BJ was a little lazy. He relied on his skills. He relied on his natural skills and ability. I mean, who gets a double black belt in jiu-jitsu in only 3 years?
Yes.
Just 3 years, man.
So after all of that, when someone like a BJ Penn came in with all-round skills, it actually changed the perception of most fighters saying, listen, I cannot compete with this guy because, yes, I'm great at striking, but if he takes me down, my game changes.
We saw that typically in the fights with Matt Hughes and Sean Shirk. When BJ Penn faced off against Matt Hughes, he bested him in the striking and submitted him.
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely,
and same thing with Sean Shirk. He shrugged off the takedowns and knocked him out with a flying knee.
Yes.
That was BJ Penn, man. And he was so good.
In fact, there is another fighter on my list that
Anderson Silva
aces his development skills is George St. Pierre. George St. Pierre, GSP comes in with a very traditional karate background.
Kyokushin karate.
But when he entered the octagon and he learned wrestling and he adapted his game to that, made him one of the greatest of all time and Canada's greatest fighter, because even he knew that karate is not going to work. If I'm just a karate fighter, it's not going to work. And I feel at some level, Lyoto Machida was not fully utilized because he did not adapt to this fact.
Lyoto Machida came in with a background of sumo and his, of course, Machida karate style, which was so effective. But Machida got away with a lot of these issues because he was above the cut. And number two, his footwork was legendary at the time.
Yes.
You could not corner Machida. You could just not. If you were running, the best way to, when somebody who's a movement-based fighter, what Andre Fiallo did very well at UFC 270 against Michel Pereira was cutting off the cage.
Yes.
And Lyoto Machida was the kind of fighter that you couldn't cut off. You just can't because
he just followed you.
Is just ridiculous. And the minute you try to come in to cut off the cage, he would strike at you.
Yes.
And get in and get out. And he would trip you. He had judo in his arsenal. He had sumo to block you when you were coming in. He had incredible movement. And apart from that, his sneaky trips and everything, he had a great Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu ground game.
Absolutely. Another fighter that I would like to mention since we are in the flow is obviously Anderson the Spider Silva, who has got legendary knockouts. He's got legendary striking. But let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, he's a black belt in BJJ. Because we have not seen him play that game.
Third degree black belt.
Doesn't mean he doesn't have those skills.
Third degree.
He chooses.
I'm sorry. Can you not wait for me to correct you? Third degree black belt. Say it.
Third degree black belt.
Please continue. Sorry.
He chooses to strike and finish off his fights in style. But man, that particular gentleman got in the aspect of overall skill sets. And honestly, right now, we are seeing all fighters entering one championship, Brave FC, be it Bellator or the UFC, come in with these overall packages. The fundamentals of the game have just gone to a different level.
Correct.
The base, the plateau, the benchmark is so high right now that you need to be an overall fighter to enter any of these platforms.
Honestly, the old saying, jack of all trades, master of none, has changed now. Because honestly, the master of one or two trades can no longer survive anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's now you have to be the jack of all trades. Yes. In MMA, you have to be. You have to have great grappling. You have to have great striking. Great. And you know who comes to mind now? If you compare now, we've talked about the yesteryear fighters.
Yes.
And now we're talking about the current crop of fighters, guys like Brian Ortega. Look at that. He came in with an incredible grappling background, but look at the kickboxing and striking that he's added to his arsenal.
Yes, the Muay Thai is next level.
Muay Thai is superb. Look at guys like Chito Vera, Muay Thai guys, and came in with have now developed a grappling game.
Yes.
Who've developed a grappling aspect to it. Guys like TJ Dillashaw, wrestlers who came in and who developed striking and footwork. I mean, if you look at TJ Dillashaw and look at Corey Sandhagen, my God, look at Peter Yan, man. Look at the goddamn champ. The freaking champ is, if you look at him on paper, he's unbeatable.
Are you talking about the champ, Aljamain Sterling?
No. I'm talking about the interim champ.
Okay.
I'm talking about the real champ. Peter Yan is still the real champ in my mind.
Well, that is beautiful.
It's bringing a tear to your eye.
That's what I'm saying. You just spoke about these 7-8 names. And to be honest, these are legit killers in their division.
Dude, they're murderers, man.
But man, Anyways, you spoke about the jack of all trades. So what we're going to be doing, ladies and gentlemen, is moving on to the final segment after the short commercial break, where we speak on UFC Fight Night, where Jack Hermansen takes on Sean Strickland. We'll see you right back after these messages.
Do you like true crime stories?
Do you like to learn about the people behind some horrible, awful crimes?
More specifically, women that may have committed these crimes.
Actually, Indian criminals that are women?
Then we'd like to welcome you to our podcast, Misconduct. My name is Raghavi.
And I am Nisha.
We cover themes like murder, dacoity, drug trafficking, financial fraud, kidnapping, and many more.
You can catch us every Wednesday on the IVM Podcast Network or wherever you get your podcast.
Welcome back. You've been listening to The Fighting Goat only on IVMPodcast.com. This is Arjun, aka Mystic Chips, along with my partner Somesh, the Superhuman Kamra. We've just had a great conversation on the evolution of skill sets and the importance of an evolved skill set being the jack of all trades in today's version of fighting, especially in the sport of MMA. But we've had a great night. We've had a great talk. We spoke about UFC 270. One thing, though, Mr. Kamra, we forgot to do that leading up during the fight, there were a lot of interesting tweets that came out for the heavyweight division. As we all know, Mr. Jon Jones is waiting in the wings, looking forward to what was happening. But I got to say, man, I really look forward to the days when Jon Jones tweets. I really do. I mean, it's amazing.
It's almost like waiting for Derek Lewis to win a fight so we can hear the interview.
Exactly. Waiting for Derek Lewis to win the fight. And he's been talking trash to everybody. During the fight, he was like, LOL shit, I may just enjoy retirement. When Cyril Gane was landing a few strikes, he wrote, "Hi guys, I love how everyone gets so impressed with the new guys. LOL." And one of the worst tweets was, "If this is the apex of heavyweight fighting, I'm excited about it because I've got some more records to break."
Oh, wow. You know what?
This is going to be fun.
Jon Jones just needs to stay out of trouble. That's it.
Seriously, I mean, when you talk about the greatest of the greatest of the greatest, it's Jon Jones.
Is Jon Jones. So
he's never lost.
Because of all his troubles outside, he was booted out of the Jackson Wing camp and he's found a new home with Coach Eric and Henry Cejudo.
Oh my God. Oh yes, you're right. Yes. I saw that picture.
It's quite nice to see all these fighters moving out and changing camps and finding their singular coaches. Like Trevor Whitman is there with Justin Gaethje. He trains Usman. He trains Rose Namajunas.
You got Matt Brown, who has his own stable of fighters as well.
Mike Brown has his own stable of fighters. And now Henry Cejudo and Coach Eric are picking up the ranks. So they had Davison Figueiredo do his camp out there.
And win, dude, in his first fight. I mean, this is Henry Cejudo's first time coaching a contender. And they won the belt. That's a big feather in his cap, man.
Absolutely.
And if Jon Jones comes back and I think, it's such a big deal. People don't realize this. When you talk about Daniel Cormier coaching you, I would kill to be in the presence of somebody like a DC or even a Triple C, Henry Cejudo. These guys are Olympians. The kind of work that they put in their lives to get to where they are, correct. It is they are cut from a different cloth. Absolutely. You can talk about how cringy he is. You can talk about how much of a douche he is or his Twitter feeds or whatever. Yeah. That man knows what the F he's talking about.
Well, he's an Olympian. He's a medal holder. He's an Olympic gold medalist.
And two-time world champion. Two-division world champion.
Two-division world champion, which is in the 125 pounds and in the 135 pounds, which means flyweight and bantamweight.
And have you noticed the similarity? That Triple C, Henry Cejudo, Olympian, gold medalist, two-division world champion.
Yes.
Daniel Cormier, Olympic wrestler, two-division world champion.
Absolutely.
There's something there, man. Even Ronda Rousey, Olympian, world champion.
World champion. Absolutely.
Basically, everybody who went to the Olympics became a world champion.
But absolutely. Speaking of the next fight card, which is happening on February the 6th. So we have one weekend off, really?
February 6th, hang on. Kya ho hi nahi sakta? We have one weekend off?
I think so. It says Feb 6th. We have UFC Vegas 46 and also it is UFC Fight Night 200. So,
wow.
Yep. So great stuff happening there where Jack Hermansen is taking on Sean Strickland in the middleweight division. Let me tell you, I mean, all the listeners, everybody who's out there, Sean Strickland was originally supposed to fight Luke Rockhold.
Yeah, I know you're very sour about this thing.
And Luke Rockhold's comeback fight in the
Still
UFC
upset.
is not happening. And Jack Hermansen has taken his place. And it is going to be the main event of the evening. We also have an interesting women's bantamweight fight where Alexis Davis is back. And she's fighting Yulia.
Anyway, Alexis Davis is back at Jack Hermansen. But we're going to be talking about Jack Hermansen and Sean Strickland. When you see Sean Strickland fight, it's like a symphony of violence.
Yes.
Violence. It's just that man, even in his training, he reminds me of Wanderlei Silva in the old shooter box days.
Yes.
Where he didn't give a crap. Wanderlei in the old shooter box days didn't give a shit about, oh, am I hurting you during sparring? Well, take it. That kind of thing,
Absolutely.
And Sean Strickland is a little mental. Even somebody like Michael Bisping, who is, he's a world champion. He's seen it all. He came up and said, he's not the kind of guy I want to hang out with because he's a little crazy. But he's absolutely crazy. And he goes hard. He's a crazy, crazy man. And I think that's what that middleweight division needs. I mean, we've got a great fight coming up at UFC 272 where Israel Adesanya and Robert Whittaker throw down for the second time.
Right.
So, Strickland, I think, who do you got, man? Hermansen or Strickland?
Well, if you ask me, I would go for Sean Strickland to take this one.
Really?
Yes, I would go for Sean Strickland because he's coming back. He's had one victory after his 4-year layoff. He was really looking forward to Luke Rockhold. That's not happening. Jack Hermansen has come in his place. I think he's going to put on the violence just to prove a point.
Well, as much as I would like to agree with you, and I'm a big Sean Strickland fan, I think Jack Hermansen has a slightly more rounded game, and he's going to change up the strategy. If you look at Sean Strickland's style, he's still again a boxing first approach.
Yes,
he's primarily boxing. He's going to look with his hands. Jack Hermansen's a little more well-rounded, so if he can mix it up, because it's a 3-round fight. Sorry, it's a 5-round fight.
It's a 5-round fight. This one.
It's going to be very interesting because it all depends on the strategy that Hermansen brings.
Right.
So I'm kind of leaning towards Jack Hermansen, but dil mein I want Strickland.
Well, dil mein Mystic Chips wants Sean Strickland, but he's going for Jack Hermansen.
But
so
guys,
Mr. Superhuman Kamra is going to go for Sean Strickland.
Okay, so Mr. Kamra is going to Sean Strickland and I'm going for Jack Hermansen. But before I let Somesh finish and wrap up today, we're going to remind you guys saying, please give us your picks. Please tell us who is going to win between Strickland and Hermansen for your chance to get some merchandise. Specifically, the t-shirts. The Fighting G.O.A.T t-shirts are out. We've got them in multiple colors. And we're going to autograph them and send them out to everybody. So guys, please give us your picks and catch us on social media. My Twitter handle is @TheMysticChips and on Instagram, I'm Arjun Chips. Go Somesh.
Yes, you can tag me on somesh.kamra on Instagram and somesh_kamra on Twitter. Ladies and gentlemen, for more exciting prizes, you need to take part in the contest. Let us know who's going to win the next UFC event and win some exciting Fighting G.O.A.T merchandise. Tag IVM Podcast, tag the hosts, Arjun Chipalkatti and Somesh, the Superhuman Kamra. And 3 winners.
This time?
Yes, 3 winners are going to win some exciting Fighting G.O.A.T merchandise. Having said that, we've had a great discussion to the first pay-per-view of 2022 and an exciting event between Sean Strickland and Jack Hermansen coming up. We will see you same time, same place next week, only on the Fighting G.O.A.T on ivmpodcast.com.
Habits? Routines? How exactly do they help us get better? Well, to simplify it for you, tune in to the Habit Coach podcast. I am Ashton Doctor and I'm going to be here to help you get better daily with some simple, easy to do habits that you can easily adapt to your life. So tune in to the Habit Coach podcast from Monday to Friday because I believe that awesome lives start with awesome habits.
सफर, रास्ते, मंजिल और मुकाम, अक्सर ये हमसे कुछ कहना चाहते हैं, पर हम हैं कि अपनी रोजमर्रा की जिंदगी में इन्हें सुनने से कतराते हैं। नमस्ते दोस्तों, मेरा नाम है केशव चतुर्वेदी और मैं आपको ले चलूंगा कुछ ऐसे सफर पर जहां आपको एक नया नजरिया मिलेगा सफर और मंजिलों को देखने का। आइए इन किस्से कहानियों में डूब जाएं। हर मंगलवार और शुक्रवार